Anaplan is a company that is right now evolving. It's creating so many things in so many different fields.
There's a very good growth mindset around knowledge sharing and helping out other people, and the problems that we're working on are really interesting.
What we're trying to do here is so different to what is already out there in the market. We can really change the face of the technology in the world.
What makes us unique is that our platform can be used in many different industries across many different business processes.
We work on problems that are very kind of at the forefront of being solved. Huge data sets, interesting data spaces.
I have, in my role as an architect, the opportunity to shape what a $5 billion company is doing in the world.
Working on the platform is an interesting challenge because of the vast amount of applications in which Anaplan can be applied. You know, we're not business users, but we have to get into the business user mindset in order to understand what they're trying to solve.
The empowerment that we can give to people in a company that is quite flat, not hierarchical, is incredible. And you empower people to solve technical problems and they end up doing brilliant work.
So I get to innovate, I get to develop solutions, and I get to see how it affects people.
I've worked on 3 or 4 different projects since joining 18 months ago, and they're always different and new and interesting. So there's that opportunity for continual learning.
I think what I really enjoy most about working here is definitely the people. Everyone that you meet, doesn't matter what team they are, everyone is so smart and so talented.
We put so much effort into culture in our interviewing processes here, which creates a really positive working environment. Like, I've worked at other much bigger, much older tech companies, and they haven't been this good.
The engineering culture here at Anaplan is very open and very inclusive.
There's very smart people with a lot of experience who are always willing to share what they know.
It's a safe atmosphere in which to do your job without any kind of unnecessary pressure.
I walk through that front door in the morning and I get a real buzz. It's such an exciting, talented group of people that I work with.
You feel that people are passionate about what they do, they enjoy coming to work, and that is quite refreshing.
We started off with 2 people in a basement in Soho. We grew that through 3 different offices, and now we have this fabulous building with some really brilliant engineers in it.
Hello and welcome to User Groups Live, broadcasting live from London. I'm Louise Archer from the Sales Enablement team here at Anaplan, and I'll be your host for today's session. We're coming to you live from Anaplan's London office here in King's Cross, where a real cross-section of Anaplan talent is based. So, what is User Groups Live? User Groups Live is a virtual event that brings the Anaplan user group experience right to your home or office. In a User Groups Live first, we're excited to welcome our audience of master Anaplanners and customers here in the room with us. User groups are where Anaplan's customers connect with other users in the Anaplan community. Members can interact online in the community and in office-like in-person meetups. User groups are driven by users for users. Whether you're a user groups veteran or are attending for the first time, we've got something for you. Today you'll learn Anaplan tips and tricks, hear the latest best practices, preview new platform features, and gain actionable steps to advance your connected planning journey. We have a packed agenda today, full of much requested topics and popular presenters. We'll hear customer stories, dive into Anaplan's new UX and mobile app, learn model building best practices, and discover how a centre of excellence can position your organisation for greater success. One note about our setup today. As you can see behind me, we're working in an office setting, so you may occasionally hear some of that activity during the broadcast. Now, some tips for getting the most out of the event. There is a live chat to the right of the video, where you can post your questions during the event. We'll do our best to have our presenters answer them in each segment. If we're not able to get to your question, our presenters will be available on the chat following their session. Also, we will keep the chat live for 30 minutes at the end of the broadcast for you to wrap up any conversations before we close. We will also launch a forum after the event closes, so there will be plenty of ways for you to connect with the team. We're recording today's session, so if you can't stay for the full event or know someone that couldn't attend live, we'll make the recording available to you. We'll be taking a couple of short breaks throughout the next 3 hours so you can keep your coffee topped up and take care of any other business needed. If you experience any technical issues, please post details in the chat or email community@anaplan.com. Our community team are standing by to help. If we experience any major technical issues, we may need to restart the broadcast. If this happens, we will send an email to everyone that has registered with instructions of what to do next. Once we're able to restart the broadcast, you'll be able to refresh the page and jump straight back in. Let's kick off today's session with some stories. We'll be talking to some Anaplan customers and partners about their success and how you can follow in their footsteps. Please welcome Paul from our customer success team, who will be talking to Joanna Emmett from EDF Energy and Usman Zia from Lion Point Group.
Hi everyone and welcome to the first session of User Groups Live here in London. My name is Paul Gallagher. I've been at Anaplan for 2 years now, holding a couple of roles as both a training consultant and now as a business partner for customer success team. I'm joined today by Usman Zia and Joanna Emmett. So for everyone watching, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself first?
Thanks for your introduction, Paul. So my name's Usman. I'm working as a senior consultant at Lion Point, where we specialise in transforming technology, strategy and operations for our alternative investment clients.
Hi Paul, hi everybody. My name is Joanna Emmett. I work for EDF Energy and I lead planning function in customer operations, and we use Anaplan for a variety of activity across the business.
Cool. So I guess it's not been long since I saw you last.
Yeah.
Last night in fact. So we had the Modelers Forum.
Yes.
Now, the Modelers Forum's been going along for a lot longer than I've been there. You've been there since the start, almost?
Yeah.
How did you come across it?
So basically there were a group of enthusiasts on the Anaplan community that really wanted to start a group where we could discuss Anaplan modelling, best practices, solutions, and a couple of us got together and we contacted Anaplan and said, look, we're interested in pursuing this, and you guys supported us, and now we have another great user group, which is the Modelers Forum.
Amazing. So what attracted you to it then? So you found it there. What's the attraction to now stay and keep going, driving it in fact?
Well, good question, Paul, and I would answer that by saying, the community Modelers Forum, it really is about people engaging and sharing their success stories as well as issues that they've been facing. So examples of that would be, yesterday we had a great presentation by Sneha from All3 Media, where she discussed her transformation of her planning process, and it's things like that that really draw people who are interested in the platform to come and attend these events. Not only that, it is an off-the-clock social environment where we can be open and discuss any issues we're facing with the product, as well as sometimes there are presentations from the product team as well as the engineers, where they explain to us the things that they are currently working on, such as the new UX. And also in a prior session, we actually got to have a first look at the mobile app before many other people did, which was really interesting.
Yeah, and also you talk about these presentations. We had a surprise guest last night as well, didn't we?
Yes, we
with
did.
David Smith.
Yes.
I mean, who better to go to a modelers building forum than David himself? Yeah. And he gave a lot of good advice out, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. So part of David's discussions were around data hub best practices and how data hubs over time have evolved. Because as we go into doing more developments, we start to understand actually, how should we be making these data hubs? How should they be working? And what we originally thought isn't actually the case anymore, where we were talking about sparsity can actually be a good thing. Obviously with cloud space growing and the way the calculations work, sometimes sparsity is not something that we need to worry about so much.
Yeah. He also gave you an insight into the new Master Anaplanners exam, didn't he?
Yes, he did. So he was also discussing with us some of the questions that might come up and testing us to see if we still had that Master Anaplan knowledge.
How did you get on?
I think we did pretty well, Paul.
Yeah, I think you did too.
Yeah.
So we're speaking about these events, but this is it's essentially a really small event in comparison to what we've just recently had.
Yeah.
We had the CPX event in London. Joanna, this was your second event, but first time presenting at CPX?
Yes, it was the first time I was presenting. The year before I went as a customer, so it's really good to see how Anaplan is adopted across a number of different businesses. Definitely a few tips I got from the first one in terms of our journey with Anaplan. And second year, this year, really excited to be asked to present, which we talked about efficiencies and really shift from Excel to Anaplan and how it can actually benefit across a number of activities in planning and forecasting, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, so what was some of well, you've mentioned the topics of shifting from Excel to Anaplan. What would be one nugget of information you'd give today then?
Definitely ability to basically go above and beyond Excel. So you can do so much more in Anaplan. Yeah. You can connect all different parts of the business. From our perspective and what we do, we do a lot of forecasting across a number of activities, very, very different, at different granularities, and shift to Anaplan really enable us to do it very accurately and without having a lot of labor-intense processes in a place as we had before. So very big transformation for the business and definitely for my function alone.
Yeah, I mean, I guess these events are perfect for people with these nuggets of information to share wide, including, again, back to the Modelers Forum. You're quite an active participant in this forum. How do you, so you mentioned earlier on that it's an off-the-clock event.
Yeah.
So how do you manage being a consultant by day and then pretty much a geek by night?
Yeah. Because it's an Anaplan community event, and obviously I spend a lot of time making contributions to the Anaplan platform and the community platform, I just treat it as attending the community essentially. So, go with an open mind, be willing to share stories, help others with solutions, and discuss, where would we like the direction of the product to go. I've been seeing a lot of benefit from that.
Cool. And as of other attendees, from your knowledge, now we know that you're a Master Anaplanner, but what people may not know is that you're also a community boss.
Yes.
So do you want to tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so actually it was a bit of a surprise and shock to me because I got an email letting me know that I was part of this great program. And for me, it started off with, when my Anaplan journey began, I wanted to learn more about the product, become more comfortable dealing with answering questions and looking at solutions. Now, Anaplan, it's a platform where people share their problems. They look for information about how to do best practices, and then other people are able to share their answers and solutions. So, I began by just going on there, sharing my ideas about product developments, helping to answer people's questions. And I got this email, and now I'm part of this great program, which I would really like to thank the community team for coming up with, because they've also given us some great swag to wear.
I was about to mention that. The bag, I guess, is the big one.
Yeah.
You've got an Anaplan community boss bag.
Yeah,
That looks incredible.
No, I'd just like to thank the team for that. It's great to be part of such a great program and see, you know, from my initial use of the platform to see how far the community has come, and now there's a lot of users. And you can also see me wearing my bag on a regular occasion.
So how often do you log in and solve these problems or promote the community itself?
So typically I've signed up to a lot of the feeds, so I get email notifications, and what I look for is new solutions or questions that people are asking that have not been answered before. And sometimes I know the solution, I'm like, right, I know the solution to this question, I'm going to make time at lunchtime and go and answer this particular question. And then sometimes actually it can happen on a day where someone's asked a question, I've been thinking about the exact same thing, and then I'll think, actually, how can I solve this? I come up with a solution, post an answer, and then I'm able to use it in my day as well.
So it helps you too?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So what would your advice be then to anyone watching regarding the community and the programs that you've mentioned?
So what I would say is, obviously Anaplan is a great product and platform, and the Anaplan community is like no other. There's nothing out there in any other product or software where you can go and get essentially free knowledge, have the ability to share your problems with others in real time, sometimes get solutions to your problems. And the work that they've been doing is great, because before, obviously, we had the learning platform side. Now they've combined that into the community, so all your information is there, free, ready for you to access.
Absolutely.
So what I would say is encourage people to go and use that.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got coming up next, in the next session actually, we've got Lee Romeo talking about the new user experience and the mobile. How long ago was it that we did a hackathon with this?
I think it was around July time when we first sort of approached some of the customers to show them the functionalities. And we had a session in London when you came in, and sort of much wider group of us at EDF with the finance teams involved as well, which is really, really useful.
So just for anyone watching, that hackathon pretty much consisted of going in, doing a quick tutorial, maybe about 2 hours worth. This is how you activate it, this is how you use it. And then we moved on, after a little bit of a break, we moved on to say, how do we lift and shift our current dashboards? And then, probably with a bit more imagination, how do we transform this and get the most out of the new UX? So I've got to ask, what was your immediate impression?
I was really impressed, and I'm not master Anaplanner, just to clarify. So from my perspective, as an end user and somebody who actually goes into Anaplan to get all the answers from quite a lot of complex data, it was very refreshing. Because personally, unless you work a lot with Anaplan, it's really difficult to know where to look for things when you've got quite complex models built. You know, a lot of models, they all talk to each other in a different way. A lot of selection boxes, which you need to know what to display to get the right answer. When I saw the sort of what you sort of showed us in terms of how you can use it, what you can do, and then we had a sort of hands-on session to do it, I was able actually to do it myself. So I was able to pick up the bits and pieces from the quite complex models and build it into something which I thought, excellent. It just gives me all I need and gives me all the key information, key stats, key KPIs in one place. So I don't have to drill through all the pages and pages of models to try to link everything together.
I do remember you saying, if you don't mind me embarrassing you now, that in the classic dashboards you were quite reluctant to build, whereas now you actually really enjoy the idea of going ahead and building your new boards, excuse me, and worksheets and all the rest. That's still true?
Yeah, it is. And I think from the modeler's perspective, when you build something complex, it's a lot of thinking about the logic, thinking about the data behind. Whether with the new user X, it's almost like that's my selling pitch. That's what I want to show. All the hard work that people put in to build something in Anaplan then come to fruition, and it looks really, really good as well. It just gives you this sort of quite a dynamic environment when we don't really have it from the classical dashboards. So it's much, much easier to do and easier to basically to get the buy-in across the business as well.
So it was a little bit more intuitive with it being a pull function rather than a push?
Definitely.
Yeah. I find that too as well, by the way. I remember also on the day that we had Karen, remember your team? She built a really impressive board, which was completely different to what you had originally. Is Karen still building?
She is. She's very, very involved in that build. We probably want to do everything really quickly, and we just need to slow down a bit. But she's probably, like I said, cherry on top of the cake.
Yeah.
You know, she built a lot in Anaplan herself, and just be able to then show it in a more funky way and something that people really get excited about outside of the team that actually works with Anaplan is really encouraging.
Yeah. So from there, so you've built all these boards. How do you intend to roll this out to the end users?
So we already started, and for me the main benefit was start building some prototypes across different user types. So we built different dashboards for bespoke business activities. So for demand forecasting, we've got one for operating cost forecast as well. And we basically build the prototypes, and then we reach out to the main activity owners and users to get a feedback. What else is missing that they would like to see from the modules that we build? Because ultimately, we build it for them to then make decisions on the back of. So it needs to be really in tune with their needs. So it's almost like recreating the user stories, but more for the dashboard front and the new UX. So the plan at the moment is that we've got all the stakeholders, all the people we want to talk to about what they need, and then we basically will start to redesign even more. Because at the moment we almost got a straw man for each of the parts of the Anaplan we build.
Yeah. And whilst you're receiving that feedback, are you having to send feedback up the chain and back to the product team?
Yes, we do. So obviously the sort of the user feedback button in a new UX, very easy, I would say. I think every time if something doesn't work or we would like to see something different or more, you can just post it through there, which is great.
I know you've probably given feedback. So without being all too positive all the time, so what's some of the feedback you've given?
So some of the feedback I've given is a lot through the community around some of the classic functionality being brought into the new UX.
Yeah.
Now, many people might not be aware, but actually the team is working very, very hard to bring on some of that old system functionality into the new UX. So initially when I came across the new UX, I'll be honest, I was a little bit resistant. Obviously, being a consultant, you obviously have to learn a lot about the product and platform, and I initially didn't understand completely the functionality, but when I took the time to learn really what the new UX was about, I was like, this is great. Anaplan is really investing in the UX side, because obviously we know Anaplan's core functionality is to be a calculation engine, so it's great to see the development of the new UX.
It is. And carrying on down that theme of development, also in the workshop and the hackathon, we shown a quick glimpse of the mobile.
Yeah.
Did that help amplify the experience of the new UX, and what benefits do you think you could see with it?
It definitely did. I think the benefit of the mobile for us is the speed of the decision making and the agile sort of working environment with the data that we really need to embed more in our business. So the ability to view everything on a mobile when a lot of senior management and myself are on the move all the time, it really brings it a bit more sort of easy for us to use and closer to our core activities as well.
Yeah, so it brings in that wider audience that may not have had visibility beforehand. Yeah, I couldn't agree more actually. But that's not the only workshop we've done, is it?
No, it's
You
not.
called me in recently to talk about the Anaplan way. What made you reach out and ask for that for your team?
So we had some changes in operationally, and obviously new people interacting with Anaplan as well. We've been using Anaplan for a couple of years now. However, obviously new people come in, they need to work with Anaplan, and it felt like it was the right time to share Anaplan way, which is the project management, agile way of working, which can be applicable to anything. And it just felt really right for the team to get that buy-in and make sure they're on the journey with us as well, because a lot of the build hasn't been done with the involvement of those people, and it really helped. I would say a lot of people commented afterwards, gave us feedback that actually that was very, very useful and just helped to picture Anaplan and how things work and how we approached the rollout of the program, really.
Well, I think you touched on an interesting point there in terms of went ahead and built without looking for all the feedback. I guess, again, Usman, I guess you've seen this in the past.
Yeah.
And what are some of the key benefits you see from the Anaplan way?
Like Joanna was saying, obviously the Anaplan way is Anaplan's view on a project management office tool on how you do an implementation. And what's really great about it is they've really thought about all the steps and processes that you need to follow when doing an Anaplan implementation. So essentially, it's the rule book for success in an Anaplan project. And if we take the time to follow those rules, you're gearing yourself up for success in an Anaplan project.
Absolutely. So I'm assuming going forward, you're going to follow all the steps perfectly.
I hope so. I will.
Yeah. So what was your key takeaway from the session?
Definitely a bit about the project management, but it's not necessarily modelers, not necessarily certified project managers. So I think the structure of the team you really need to have around you in order to make the Anaplan rollout a success is quite critical for me now, thinking about this. I always sort of knew that, but I think now the wider team is aware. It's definitely great because it brings everybody on the same page and everybody works for the same goal, and it's much more structured in approach and everybody understands their roles in a process as well.
Was there anything about that process that you thought could be challenging if you go into your next project?
Yeah, probably. Obviously, with Anaplan, it could be the scope of what you do could be quite big. So I think the involvement of people outside of your sort of modeler's world definitely a challenge moving forward as well, because it's always the key just to get the right people involved at the front and also get the right feedback at the right time, so you don't make mistakes as you go through the deployment. And in a way, you can make the journey much more quicker and smoother if you have all those roles really clearly defined and everybody knows how they're contributing.
Yeah, and how about yourself, Usman? What would you say is probably the more challenging part of the Anaplan way, just to keep religious leads to?
Yeah, so what I would say is one of the key components in that methodology is obviously gathering your detailed requirements for the user stories. And that's one of the most challenging areas because you have to really think about your business process. That's why it's really important to take the time when planning a project to really understand what it is that you want, and not just thinking about how did we do this in Excel, how did we do this in our legacy system, because actually now we're thinking about how are we going to do it in the future with Anaplan. And it can, and from my experience, I've seen a lot of the time that where we've missed detail in the user stories, this has come out in testing, and then we thought actually there was a scenario that we never thought of, and that's why the Anaplan way is really beneficial in the success of Anaplan projects.
Yeah, I guess as well on their community, we see a lot of information coming from David Smith regarding plans.
Yes.
And that accompanied with the Anaplan way is a huge benefit.
Yes.
And probably actually stops us just diving in, building, which I guess geeks like us probably love just doing it first, when we now need to actually rein ourselves in a bit and think about it.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what bit of advice then, as we come to the end of this session, would you give to anyone watching, whether it be on the new UX, the community, or the Anaplan way? What would your key takeaway be?
Yeah, my key takeaway would be obviously the Anaplan community is a free platform, and it has all the information that you need to gear yourself up for success when using the Anaplan product. So I'd really focus on taking the time, looking at the content, joining the community and being a part of it, sharing your ideas. If you've got problems, share them with us, because we're more than willing to take the time to help you.
That's a great answer, actually. Yeah. Joanna?
I think mine would be around a bit of Anaplan way, possibly, together with the new user X, about the fact that you create your user stories at the beginning to build something on a plan. You build in a classic way, and then you need to get the same engagement and sort of almost like another user story for your dashboard in a new UX, because it's a very different level of detail and probably different audience as well for both. And I think having done both sessions with you, Paul, it sort of made me realise that there's definitely a slightly different journey for my customers and people that I work with that I need to consider to make it really a good, strong tool and a successful one.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's all the questions I have, but I think what we should do now is we should look over to our viewers and see if they've wrote in and asked us any questions. Hi everyone again. So we've got a couple of questions. Shouldn't be too taxing for you both. I'll start with Usman actually. So how do I become a community boss?
So the Community Boss program is geared around users of the community platform that really want to support it. So the more time you spend writing content, it could be best practices around how you do a particular modelling solution. It could be around actually, now we're moving into Christmas, and how do I do seasonal forecasting? So you could do a post about that. It could also be, I've got new ideas on how I want the product to be developed. Suggesting those in the idea exchange is another method of doing that, and also answering people's problems and solutions. I think it's really about those that are willing to give the time to help the community and the platform grow. That's what being a community boss is really about. And if you're willing to do that, I'm sure you'll be awarded.
I hope so. And Joanna, so obviously it's a little bit more on the feedback element here. So how do your employees give feedback on the new UX, and are they active on the community?
They are active on the community, that's for sure, and obviously the sort of the feedback button on the new UX is definitely the direct feedback to your product team that can make changes as they are needed. But we gather the feedback across the teams as well. So internally, I've got a key person who looks after Anaplan and all the sort of structure of the models, and Karen. And she will manage the feedback log across different parts of the business of whatever needs changing or needs to be done, or any new functionality that would probably benefit this area would be gathered centrally, and then we'll share it with Anaplan.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. And I think that is all the questions we have. So I guess the next section coming up, which I hope you stick around for, is Lee Romeo, and he will be showing you all about the new UX and the mobile app. And I believe there's going to be a bit of an announcement. So that's exciting.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul, and special thanks to Joanna and Usman for sharing your stories. Remember, we have thousands of community members who want to connect with you online and in person. Head over to the community to find out more. We're going to take a 10-minute break, but we have lots more still to come, so stay tuned, including, as Paul said, a very exciting announcement about our mobile app. Don't miss it. We'll be right back. Hi everyone and welcome back to User Groups Live, broadcasting live from London. Don't forget to post your questions in the chat to the right of the video. Our presenters are standing by to answer them. Up next, Anaplan's new user experience and mobile app. You've heard about it and you probably have questions. How does the new UX connect with mobile? How do you get started with the new features? And what's coming next? We'll dig into all of this and more with Lee from the product team.
Welcome back to everyone to User Groups Live. My name is Lee Romeo from the product team at Anaplan, and today we'll be chatting about the new user experience and mobile app. You heard previously from Paul, Joanne and Usman that we have some exclusives to User Groups Live today. But what we'll be doing is a little bit of a deeper dive into the new user experience and how that connects with the mobile application. So I'll just show you our standard disclaimer, as we will be showing you some items today that are coming soon on our roadmap and in development. So it is intended for our general product direction and information purposes only, and may not be the final product that you see. So let's dive into the components of the new UX. Now, you may have seen some of these the other day in User Groups Live out of York from Steve Prendergast and Dave Waller. The new user experience consists of the new user interface on the web and also the native mobile application. So what you're able to do then is create apps and pages in the new user experience that are connected to your Anaplan model, and then view those on the web or the native mobile application through the new user experience. Now, a question, how does the new UX and mobile connect? So we'll have a look at a simple diagram of the architecture, and the new user experience and the mobile app actually connect to your Anaplan model. So this shows that from the Anaplan model, where all of your data is in the data hub, the central location, then connects to the new user experience, the mobile app, and then also to Anaplan Classic. So what you can actually have is some of your organization using Anaplan Classic on classic dashboards, for instance, say the finance team. And then you can also build out your new apps and pages on the new user experience and then take advantage of the mobile app for, say, salespeople in the field, all coming back to that one single source of truth in Anaplan. Now, what we'll do today is we'll dive right into a demo. So we're going to tell you a little bit of a story. We're going to build out some pages. We're going to show you how they look on the mobile application. And then a little bit later on, we'll show you some great stuff, a User Groups Live exclusive of what's coming up soon. So the story I'm going to tell you today is about our user personas. So I'm an analyst, my name is Anthony, and my senior executive, Danielle, who has just said I need to duck out to the office on a quick business trip overnight, has asked me for some additional information. Now, I know that I can supply this to Danielle quickly and easily through creating a new UX application and page, which will absolutely suit her needs. Now Danielle is off to the airport, she's left the office, and now it's up to me to create this page for her. So we'll quickly dive across into our connected planning application with the new user experience on the web. Now, what I can do is I can create a page in the new user experience where I could create a board or a worksheet. Now, I know that actually I've got something already in my application that almost suits what Danielle really needs. However, I know that I can simplify this to make this easier for her to view and consume on the road. So an easy way to do this is simply to just duplicate my page, where I can see here, I can put it into another category and also give it a name. So we duplicate our page. We can see there that my page is now ready. I can scroll down to my sales category, which I added it into, and then change the name. So we can call it whatever we like, which makes sense to Danielle, which is Employee Comp Analysis. So we can change the name of that one. And then what I'll do is I will go into this new page that I've created, and I will go into the builder experience so I can really trim down and get to that information that Danielle really needs. Now, in the view that you're seeing now is the board designer, where I can go in, I can change the layout of my board in, say, the column format. I can change, say, the widths into various sizes and columns. And then on my right-hand side, I actually have my palette where I can choose different types of cards where I can drag onto my board. But what I'll do for now is I'm just going to trim this down and make this really, really easy for Danielle to consume while she's on the road. So I'll get rid of a lot of the detail that I don't need. And then what I can do, as mentioned in this layout format, I will drag this around and then put it into a format that will be easy for her to understand. I have my chart card on my left-hand side here. I have some KPI cards. I have an image card of the employee, and then I have some more charts and then some grid data at the bottom. Now, I know that Danielle won't require this, so I'm just going to clean this up a little bit at the bottom. And what I'll do is I will move this card to the left here. So that's looking pretty good. But what Danielle has actually asked me is that she needs some specific data on a grid. So I'm going to grab a grid card out of the palette, and I'm going to go in and configure the data on my card. Now, I know that she needed some payout data, and I can easily search and find that on an existing module that I have created inside my model. Now, this module actually has a lot of data, and it's really hard to see what we need to find here. So through a tool called View Designer, I can actually do this inside the new user experience without having to go back to Classic through my pivot and filter mode. I can go in, I can then just drill down into the line items that I want to see, and then quickly and easily just select, say, year to date, quarter to date. We'll also do the attainment as well as the bookings. And then when I apply that, I can actually see it really cleans up and simplifies right down to the data that I need. Now, this is looking really great. However, I think that Danielle probably won't want all of the time information that we can see here. So if I go back into my pivot and filter mode, and then I can have a look at all of my time that I'm seeing there. Now, I could go through and manually check each one of my months, but with level-based show, I can simply uncheck that. I can see all of my months there, it's done automatically, select all of those, and then just hit apply. And what that's actually done is it's shown me just those months, which is exactly the data that I need to display. So what I will do is I will just then have a look here. I can have a look at my title. That looks great. I can then add in a tooltip if I like by just giving some additional information or context about the particular card, which then shows up on the right-hand side as a tooltip. I can then add a link to this page. So I will come down and we will actually link this grid through to our sales comp transactions. I will then add that to my board, which is then instantly shown up on my board here. I will then just make sure that it's got enough room. That looks pretty good. We'll just take a look at my, we'll make that photo a bit bigger. That's great. Now I'm going to publish that board. So what I've done is I've duplicated an existing page, I have modified my data, I have added in some new data for Danielle, customized that through the View Designer, and then published that to my board. Now I'm actually ready to send this to Danielle, who is out on the road. She's at the airport, probably waiting in the gate. I think she usually flies business class, so she's on the Wi-Fi there, but she doesn't actually carry her laptop around. She finds they're too big and heavy. So what she actually carries is her tablet and her mobile device. What I'm going to do is actually send this page to Danielle as I can quickly and easily through the user experience, and then have her view this information on the mobile app. So let's have a look and see what it actually looks like on the mobile application. Now, because my mobile application knows who I am, it knows when I'm on the web, it knows my recents, it knows my favorites, it knows my pages and all of my apps. Because I've just created this page, Employee Comp Analysis, it appears in my Recents tab. So then what I can do is I can go inside this page and then I can instantly view the page that I created on the web on the mobile device. So we can see here that we've got our image card, we've got our employee picture, we've got a chart, our KPIs, we've got that new grid that we created in View Designer along with a link there as well. So we can actually interact with these cards by tapping on a card. We can go full screen. What we can actually do is remove some of these series on these charts. We can get more information by tapping tooltips and seeing that data for that particular series. Then what I can actually do is I can change my dimensions. So Danielle, our senior executive, wants to know about sales figures. Now, this is for Tom Fraser, as you saw earlier. But actually, what Danielle wants to know about is Ron Johnson. Now, Danielle knows that Ron is a great sales guy. So what we'll do is we'll come into our filter and then we'll look for Ron Johnson. Now, if we had a big list of employees and didn't actually know how to find Ron, what we could do is search for him. So we'll just type in Ron and then we'll go back into our app and then we'll show you how to do that filter so we can then change the filter that is on that particular page. So back into our analysis page and then down into our chart. We can then tap or search on Ron, apply that filter, and then instantly that data has changed on that full screen card that I'm viewing. Not only that, when I actually scroll back through my page, I can see there that my employee avatar has changed. So I know that I'm actually looking at Ron Johnson, which is really great. Now, Danielle, she's on her way to the airport. She's flown off to the customer. She's made some decisions. That's really great. What she can do then is drill down into, say, a worksheet. Now, earlier, what we did is we created this full screen grid and we added a link to that. And I can actually drill down and see further detail by linking through to that worksheet or that large grid that we had on the web, and I can view that on the mobile device. So you can see here as I'm scrolling through that lovely conditional formatting. And as I stop scrolling, you'll notice that the actual column header comes into display. Now that's really great because it gives us context no matter where we are in the worksheet. But what I can also do is I can tap on the header and I can just drag this out and then I can see the full information for that column header, which is really great, so I know exactly what's going on. But not only can we see this data in portrait, we can also go landscape mode and view that full screen. We can scroll around. We can see, again, our column headers. We can resize. And we can also get a preview of what's in those cells, which is really, really handy. So what we've shown you is how, as a page builder in the new UX, I can create pages as an analyst for Danielle. But wouldn't it be great if Danielle had the power herself to be able to create these pages, which would then take all the time off me and empower Danielle to do this herself? Well, we can now do that with a new feature called My Pages. So in our My Pages feature, we're enabling end users to create their own versions of pages for their own view. So as an end user, I can come into any board. I can then have a look at this board. I can save a personal copy, which then saves this as a My Page. I can see that by My Page 1, another little icon here that only you can see that page. I can access my Pages by going to this top left-hand menu and then going into the My Pages section, where I'll be able to see my page. That's really great. Analysis. We'll just call that our overview. That's our own page. That's fantastic. Now, wouldn't it be really great if we could see that on the mobile as well? Well, we can. We just refresh our My Pages section. Our own personal page, which we can only view, has appeared on the mobile app, and then we can again roll in and then see that data on that particular page. So that's a really fantastic feature for our end users, and that's empowering our end users that don't have to be page builders or the traditional model builder. So that's really allowing for an easy and fast adoption of the user experience and Anaplan within your company. Now, what we'll do is we will take a breather of the demo and go back to our slides and have a bit of a chat about how the new UX web and the mobile connect together. So let's think about the board page that we created in the web and then how that actually looks and transfers to the mobile viewport. We've done a lot of work at Anaplan to try and fit all of this large data within inside this very small viewport. And as you can see here, the numbers actually correspond to those cards on the web that then transfer into that vertical listing on our mobile app, which we could then scroll through. So if you look at it on the web, it actually goes from top to bottom and left to right in a row format. And that's how it actually appears on the mobile device, where you can scroll vertically and then you can interact by going full screen with any of those cards and then having a look at the data inside those cards. So essentially the takeaway here is you build a page once and then it is made available instantly on the mobile app without having any further work to do. Now, I know it's been hyped up today, the latest and greatest with Anaplan Mobile. You might have heard about an exclusive with Anaplan Mobile today. Well, I am proud to announce an exclusive for User Groups Live, which we are announcing today. 2 brand new mobile features, which I am going to demo to you today. They will be available in the app stores next Monday. So you'll be able to download those from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. Now, I know the live audience here is wondering also what these new features are. So I will tell you now. Our first one is the Customer Tenant Switcher, now available for mobile. Now, I know all of our partners have been requesting this for a while. It is a highly requested feature from our customers as well. So now you can actually switch your customer tenant straight from the mobile, independent of the web. So that's a really fantastic feature to bring out. And then also the game changer for the mobile, making the mobile a really powerful tool with Anaplan, is data input. So we're starting our data input journey, and on Monday in the app stores, you'll be then allowed to update your worksheets with checkboxes, not only on a worksheet, but also on a board. So you'll be able to update that data live, straight into that one single source of truth from your mobile device. So let's get into a demo of the tenant switcher and checkboxes on the mobile application. So we were working through our demo for Danielle and Anthony earlier in our connected planning app. However, the demo I'm going to show you today for our coming soon, one of those is our customer switcher. So all I have to do is enter my menu in the right-hand side here, and then go down to my switch customer option, where I can see all of my available customers. All I then have to do is tap the customer that I would like to see, and then instantly my recents are updated, my favorites, my pages, and all of my apps are updated with all of my pages and apps underneath that particular customer. Now, as I mentioned, it's just as simple as going in and changing that customer under that menu, which then is independent of the web. Now, it just so happens that the checkboxes or data input demo is on this new customer that I have selected. It was that easy. So what I will then do in my recents is actually go into a worksheet and then show you how to update checkboxes on the worksheet. So what we have here is a worksheet. We can see a lovely conditional formatting, and we can see a couple of different checkboxes with active. So what we're actually having a look here is making these projects active in this particular view. Okay, so all I then need to do is just check these boxes, and then instantly they are updated on the mobile app. It's as easy as that. And then I can also do that in landscape mode, where I can see if I enable these, it's actually updating the rest of my worksheet as I'm doing this. So that is a fantastic feature that really empowers Anaplan on the go through the mobile application. Now, not only is the data input available on a worksheet, it's also available on a board. So we'll go now to a board page where we will have a grid similar to what we created before for Danielle in our dynamic filter grid. So we'll go full screen with this grid on a board, and then we're able to basically go through and do exactly the same as what we did before, updating these particular checkboxes. So I can update these, I can then close that, I can still see that's updating on the board, and that will then update any other data that is related to that particular module on that board. So that is the data input checkboxes, 2 exclusive product releases to the user groups live, which will be coming to you on Monday to the app stores in the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. So please get on there and download that. Now let's move on and have a look at some of the features that are coming soon for Anaplan Mobile. So we've just released the waterfall chart for the new UX web, and I'm happy to announce that coming soon we will have waterfall charts available on the mobile, which you can see on your screen now on the right-hand side. But one really exciting piece of our new waterfall chart that's coming out is the ability to pan and zoom. So you'll be able to do a 2-finger pan, and then you'll be able to do a pinch to zoom, which is really fantastic. You can have large charts and really get in to that data, which is great news. And the next one is data input. So following on from what you've seen today with checkboxes, we're going to follow that up with number input. So then you'll be able to update a checkbox and then also update some numbers on the fly with the mobile device. And lastly, we're going to announce that we're bringing out biometric login for non-SSO users. This is a highly requested feature, so you don't have to remember your username and password. You'll be able to log in with Touch ID or Face ID on Apple devices, and also Android fingerprint on Android devices. So now you won't have to remember your password, you can simply log in with your face. Okay, so how do I get enabled with Anaplan Mobile? Well, it is actually really simple. You just go straight to the app stores, the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, and then download the Anaplan application. So just by searching Anaplan from both those app stores, and then log in to the Anaplan app with your Anaplan credentials to view your apps and pages. So that is both SSO or single sign-on login for our enterprise clients, and also non-SSO logins as well. And then lastly, create a page in the new UX in the web to view on your mobile. Now, as I mentioned earlier, not only do page builders have the ability to create pages, end users also have the ability to create pages which are then shown on the mobile device. So there's 3 steps there that makes this really easy. Download from the App Store, log in, and then have a look at those pages that you've created. Now, we've come to the end of our section for the new UX and mobile, and I believe we have some questions online. So we're just going to cut to these questions and we'll be back soon. Welcome back, everyone. Well, we've just had a look at the questions that have come in here for User Groups Live for the new UX and the mobile section and the mobile. And the first question is there any use of the mobile app that works for modelers rather than end users? Well, the answer to that is at the moment, the mobile app is targeted to our end user personas. So say end users with an ICM use case out in the field wanting to update sales figures on the fly. For now, we don't have any modeling experience in the mobile app as we are focused on the mobile viewport. But as we make more tablet customizations in future, we will consider some modeling experience in the app as well. Another question here is the Anaplan Mobile available on all pricing tiers? That's a great one. I'm happy that's been asked, and I'm happy to announce that Anaplan Mobile is available on all pricing tiers. So that's mobile for everybody. All you need to do is download from the App Store and then log in with your credentials. And then a last one that just come in. My phone is a bit older. Do I need to worry about system requirements? So Anaplan Mobile is available on iOS 11 or higher for Apple, and then Android operating system 9 and above. So generally, Anaplan Mobile will run on most of your Apple devices from an iPhone 5 all the way up to the new iPhone 11s. And then as there are so many thousands of Android phones from the operating system version 9 and upwards. And I think we've got one more question that's just popped in. Is there a way to select default values on the mobile application for a page? That's an easy one. As the page builder or the end user, the default values on your page will actually come across to the mobile app as well. So when you open that page, those default values will be the ones in those selectors as well. And that looks like all of our questions today. I want to thank everyone for joining. I hope you learned something today, and please jump onto the app stores and download Anaplan today.
Thank you, Lee. It's exciting for us to be able to share the mobile app with our customers. Don't forget, you can search Anaplan in the App Store or on Google Play and download the app to your device today. Here at Anaplan, we live our values every day, but there are usually one or two values that stand out for each of us. I think for me, these would be inclusive and collaborative. Just over 3.5 years ago, I left a global FMCG organisation to join a small startup named Anaplan. I took a chance and it definitely paid off. Our inclusive and collaborative culture has given me many opportunities for professional and personal development, and I'm proud to be an A-shaped person. We wanted to share with you some of the ways other Anaplanners live these values. Take a look.
Before I started at Anaplan, I often was met with the automatic rejection letter, so I decided to take a pretty drastic step. In the Minneapolis Skyway, I held up a sign which said, "On a mission, launch career, take a resume." That is actually how I found my job at Anaplan.
Because we are the pioneers in the connected planning space, it's imperative to be tenacious in everything we do.
Open to me means being open to ideas, open to people.
Anaplan creates an environment for employees to be able to deal in truths.
And that drives the whole organization forward.
My team is very distributed across the globe. What we do to stay open is we hold virtual working sessions with each other.
One of the things that comes to mind for me is being really open with our customers, even if it's bad news.
Anaplan recognizes that we are all unique and fabulous individuals.
When I came out as transgender and decided to start my transition from female to male, I felt really comfortable in talking to my colleagues, and the feedback I got was fantastic. Everyone was so supportive, so excited to be part of this journey with me, and I really feel like I can bring my authentic self to work.
It doesn't matter what team you're in, it doesn't matter where you're from.
When you're trying to solve some of the most complex problems in the world, you need a diversity of thought. So being inclusive and making sure that we hear all of those different opinions and perspectives helps us to come up with better solutions.
In November 2017, my husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and we lost him in January of this year. Because we are a values-based organization, my family and I were supported, we were loved, we were reached out to. I've never worked anywhere else where I could have come through this experience employed, period, let alone not drowning in medical debt, not having lost my house, not having a job to come back to.
Being creative, I'm able to exhibit that every day through the freedom that I have to dress the way I feel in my heart and still be seen as a professional in my workplace.
Here at Anaplan, we have the freedom to think creatively when we close deals.
Creative is about solving problems in new and interesting ways that can make a real difference.
Each day is a new learning experience because I'm surrounded by some extraordinary individuals.
Flexibility of working at Anaplan offers me the opportunity to work on creative aspirations that I have outside of the company, but then bring them back into Anaplan.
And without creativity, Anaplan wouldn't be where it is today.
There are no knowledge hoarders at Anaplan. Everybody here is
working together to ensure that we achieve a greater outcome.
I'm really proud to have worked with all of IT across multiple teams and workplace services and other departments to open 4 new offices in a 2.5-month period. We worked across multiple time zones, geographies, and I'm really proud to have been part of one larger team.
We need people who can reach cross boundaries and come together to make sure that we all succeed as one.
A-shaped people start with our customers.
A-shaped people think big
and act bold. A-shaped people win with speed and innovation.
A-shaped people act like owners.
I'm an A-shaped person.
We
are A-shaped people.
Pretty awesome, right? Clearly I'm not the only A-shaped person. Where you have values, you also need guidelines. Did you know that we have an official set of model building guidelines? We call it the Planual, and today we have the creator here to talk about how to make the most of your model building. I'd like to introduce David Smith, Vice President of Anaplan's Operational Excellence Group.
Welcome to User Groups Live, here in London and around the world. My name is David Smith, Vice President of the Operational Excellence Group here at Anaplan. I've been here for about 6 years, coming up for that, and what's been apparent to us in the last few years is as our customers have scaled their use of Anaplan and used larger and larger data sets, that we needed to give more guidance on the techniques you can use in Anaplan. There are lots of different ways of modelling in Anaplan, and some of those don't scale as well as other ones. So we set out a couple of years ago to look at all these options to give you the best guidance on using Anaplan the most efficiently in all of your modelling, not just when you're looking to scale. So the Planual is the physical manifestation of our standard. The standard itself is a set of rules around model building, and it will evolve. This is essentially our initial cut of it based on what we know. And as Lee showed you just now, we're evolving our platform. So as we evolve our platform, we will also evolve the standards. And we're still learning. The standards came about because we were finding things out that not a lot of us knew from the beginning. It's still a fairly young company, still a fairly young product. So we're still finding out what you want to do with our product and then what the best ways to model that in Anaplan. So I'll say at the outset, these are guidelines, these are rules, and it's a balancing act. As in most model building, you have to make a choice sometimes, or you have to compromise. But we try and look at three main areas. And the first of these is obviously performance. You want your models to perform well. You want your users to experience some good response times whenever they're inputting data. You want your imports and your exports to run efficiently. So we look at those, and we look at aspects where we know that these constructs are not as efficient in certain areas, and we try and tell you which ones to use and which ones not to. We want the users to be able to use your product, use your application that you're giving to them. So it's all very well having a really super fast product. If it's horrible for them to use, they're not going to be very happy. So you have to look at that. You have to make it easy to understand. You have to make it that it's logical. And finally, you have to make sure that this is sustainable and thinking about the future. You're not just modeling now, you're modeling for the future as well. Things change. If anyone who says something isn't going to change, then they're not telling the truth. Because we know in this world, everything changes, and it changes often. So you have to build for the future, think about what might happen. It might not happen, but it probably will. So plans is essentially the standard. And we looked at, in terms of acronyms, that was one of the main ones we wanted to put out there first of all. And again, we'll go through the sections of what that actually means now. So again, as we said, performance is the key part. It's the beginning of the word, and it's where you really do start. What I would say, though, is the good thing is if you adopt the standards that we're going to go through in a second, you don't have to work that hard. Performance kind of comes naturally. As you go through the rest of the standards, the performance aspects just come with those. Yes, there's certain aspects, certain functions, certain techniques that we know are more heavy on the performance than others, but essentially the rest of it is just a byproduct. So the next part is the logical, it's the L. And you may have heard of Disco. It's one of the first things we tried to get out there, which is around building your modules in a logical way and trying to model in a natural way and a more logical sort of structure within your models. We want you to use the dimensions and multidimensionality of Anaplan. That's what the tool is. We see a lot of models out there where we've moved away from that natural way of modeling, and surprise, surprise, the performance gets impaired. We want it to be understandable. So when you walk away, and this is particularly important for partners, but if you're a customer administrator and you move jobs or you move roles in your department, you want someone to pick that model up. You want them to understand what you've left them. So you can use the notes to document the why. That's a new innovation we've had in the last few years, which is very helpful. But we also want you to break things up. So break these long formulas down, break the models up into logical places, logical chunks, that someone can understand where the calculations are, where the inputs are. That's the kind of premise of the auditability. Nobody wants to work harder than they have to, and our engine is exactly the same. So why do calculations more than once? You want to put them in the right places. Why calculate over more dimensions than you want to? Essentially, we want to make sure that you're only doing what you need to do, and the engine wants to do the same thing. So where we can, we try and turn the summaries off, so we don't need them. We put calculations only using the dimensions that are necessary to actually give you the right result. And finally, touching on that S again, we want it to be sustainable. Try to avoid hard coding, using different techniques to make sure it's flexible just in case something changes. And if your management want to change their minds on a driver or an assumption, you can make a very quick change. You may even put that in the hands of the users so they can make that change themselves. So the Planual is there. It's a physical thing. It's on the web. If you Google it, it comes up first. So, you know, we are #1 search for that. So if you get stuck and you don't know any links that are provided, you can just Google it. It's there. It's fantastic. So within that, though, the first part of it, and one of the things we'll go through in a second, is just the kind of key principles. So these aren't specific rules as such. These are just general guidelines. And those of you who know me know that I say all these things pretty much all the time. And this one I actually said before I joined Anaplan. I've been using different technologies for 20 odd years, doing the same sort of thing, and this still applies. And that kind of applies for the whole of the Planual really. Is a lot of these are not Anaplan syntax. They're just good modeling guidelines that you can apply in pretty much anything that you do in any model. But obviously we've tailored them specifically to Anaplan. So there are loads of ways you can model it in Anaplan. A lot of them are the wrong way. So it's a question that we always ask when you're modeling. Should you really be doing that? You know, just because you can actually do it, and just because Anaplan will not give you an error, doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way to model. We touched on it just now. Calculate once and then reference it. The way Anaplan works when it opens up the model is it does all the calculations everywhere. It's a consistency across every single cell in your model so that everybody, whoever they are, whatever the role, whatever intersection of the data they're looking at, it's the same number. And then it increments based on what people do. It's why the engine is so efficient. That's the design of the engine in the back end. So you want to use that to your advantage. Why do calculations over and over when you can do them all at the beginning? But that will only work if you actually do the calculations once and then reference them. If you put the same expression in lots of places, it will calculate lots of times. So you want to use that to your advantage. Use the calculation mode and just again, make sure that you're only calculating what you need to. Why overcomplicate anything? Some of the formulas we see get records for the wrong reasons. It's not a prize for building the longest formula that you can. It's actually the other way around. And back to my first point, if you model naturally and you model with the structures in Anaplan, you don't need long formulas. You really don't. You should be able to use the structures to do the work for you because it is a very simple modeling tool. So when some of the ones that we see and it takes you a day to work out what that formula is doing, it's too long. You know, as we said, if it falls off the bottom of the formula editor, it's too long. So think about your formulas, and if you start getting it that big, you need to start thinking about breaking it up. Only calculate what you need to. So again, using calculation modules, summary options don't need to be on most of the time. Use the right dimensions. So don't do a calculation that only changes by time in a module dimension by customers and products, because it's just doing it for no reason. This is probably the most controversial comment in the last few years. It's not always a problem to have sparse modules. And as we'll go through in a few more details later, sometimes it's actually the best approach. It's the smallest approach and the fastest approach. So when I started, you eliminated it, you got rid of it. It was everything you did to try and get rid of all the sparsity you had in your models, which goes back to my first point. It's not natural the way Anaplan wants to work. It's moving away from the way it wants to work, so performance suffers sometimes. So it's a balance. Sometimes you have to, sometimes you don't. And that's the point of this is don't just jump straight to the elimination of it until you've actually considered the alternatives. Don't compromise your functionality for the users because you've been told you've got to get rid of sparsity. Coming on that point, it's sometimes better to be slightly bigger and quicker than try and make it smaller and slower. Most end users don't know how big the model is, so they just want a performance. So we've seen correlations between models, and it's not bigger equals smaller, bigger equals slower, sorry. It varies. It depends on how you build it. Some of the worst performing models we see are the smallest models we see. So you can't say just because it's big means it's going to be slow. That's not true. And in computing speak, for those geeks out there, Booleans are great. They are 1 or 0, that's it. They are the most efficient structure you can use in anything, and nothing's different in Anaplan. So we want you to try and use that sort of functionality where you can. Text is the opposite. Text is the worst structure we can use from a computing point of view because it uses more memory. So again, we now know the impact text has, and we'll touch on one of those in a second. Just be careful with using text. Try to avoid it where you can. And in particular, try to stop joining text together. So again, we'll touch on it in more details, but joining text increases that impact. So we try to do as much work as we can in terms of joining text outside of Anaplan, because just because we can doesn't mean we should. I see this a lot with a lot of our models. People want to do everything, and they want to do everything for every single part of the business. And sometimes that exception drives so much complexity that it impacts the rest of the main part of the model. And the rest of the users who don't care about that little one thing that might happen some point maybe, it ends up impacting the models. Sometimes you have to just let the manager do their job and actually give them the ones that don't fit the pattern and say, sorry, you've got to work this out yourself. But you can do it in a way, and you can provide them with the dashboards, you can provide them with the exception reporting that says, these ones don't work, you need to work out what to do with these because we tried to model it as best we could and these don't fit. If you try to sanitize the numbers too much, you find you affect everything else. So don't model exceptions as exceptions. Don't let them drive the rest of the complexity in your model. And finally, one of the transformational elements of Anaplan and the ability to use the sum and the lookup formula are fundamental to the way we build. We can have different structures throughout the model. We can have the most appropriate structures throughout the model. And sum and lookup you do need to master to be able to model properly. But using them in the same construct can lead to large intermediate calculations, which means you get the performance impact. So back to the whole premise of breaking things up, making them more logical. This is one of those that we know is a performance impact. So we say break it into two pieces and you'll see a big improvement in your performance. It does potentially mean your model might be slightly larger, but it will perform better. So again, it's this compromise. If you know the risks and you know the connotations of your choices, you can make a better decision about modeling. So they're the general guidelines. Let's drill into some of them without going into specific rule numbers. I'm not that much of a geek that I can remember what 2.0, 0.4 or whatever is, but there's some big principles. And these are the kind of big takeaways. And if you've looked on Community, you'll have seen we've written a lot of articles around some of these over the last year. So the references for those will be available afterwards. But if you go to the main plans page within Community, all of these articles are listed at the bottom. So you can easily navigate to the actual more detail here. We're only going to go into a summary view at this point. And this one, this is, again, slightly controversial in one sense in that we have two ways of doing things. So they are essentially the same things, but we're trying to move away from using one construct. We're trying to unify how we model. And as you can see on there, I'm not going to go into all of them in detail, but there are functionality gaps of using list properties over line items. So the challenge that we face with some of these is there's two ways of doing things. So we find people who prefix their lists with an L so that they know that it's a list property. Because in a formula, there is no way really of knowing. If you follow our naming conventions, which are in the book, then you should know, but it's quite easy. Products.segment. Is that a module called products or a list called products? I have no idea. You just don't know. So people put an L in front of it, which again is unnecessary. It's not really following what you need to. So for us, it's just unify one way of doing things. List properties are essentially one-dimensional, but sometimes they become two-dimensional. Because if you've got a cost center rolling up into a department, what happens next month if it changes? Or in the future it might change. So you end up repeating the data. So going back to the calculate once and reference many times, you're moving that data into a multi-dimensional module, so you're now doing the calculation effectively twice. Well, if you started in a module, you're not doing it twice. So this is kind of why we're trying to sort of encourage you. You have to in some cases. And throughout the Planual, there are exceptions. There are reasons why you have to go and do certain things, and list properties is some of those. But just to clarify, they are the same thing. They work in the same way. They take up the same amount of space. They take the same amount of time to open up. Again, in terms of the myths, they're treated exactly the same way in the engine underneath the surface. There's no differences between them. So for me, simplify everything. Simplify as we event is one of our values in Anaplan. Let's just keep it simple. Use one way, so you don't have to worry about which one it is. It's just a line item. It always will be. The other one, again, just because we can doesn't mean we necessarily should. This is at the heart of Disco in terms of trying to make your modules sole purpose, trying to explain what that module is doing. You could build your Anaplan models in about 10 modules probably for the whole thing, and some of the modules we see out in the field, every single line is a different dimensionality. So it's really difficult to actually understand what it's doing. And again, to clarify, if you put that module line item in a separate module as opposed to a subsidiary view, there is no difference in performance because the line item is essentially where the calculation is done. Modules from the calculation perspective are purely just containers to hold the calculation. When it does the actual engine calc, it is just that line item level. So it doesn't really care where it came from. So you can get confusion around the modules. You don't actually know what this module is doing because it kind of does everything. Now, for some people, they say, it's great. I know where everything is. That's fine until you move on. And then someone else comes in and has no idea. But one of the things that we see a lot, and I kind of win the bet most times when I challenge people on this, is because it's not the logical place to put that calculation, it is very likely that calculation will exist somewhere else, particularly if you've got multiple developers. Because they may be looking for a calculation and they look at the module and they go, well, it won't be in there. So then they go and build it somewhere else. So we see it often where the same expression is in multiple places, which means you're doing the calculation more than once. So for me, this actually leads to a performance sort of degradation rather than a benefit, because you will see more calculations in there. So removing them gives you that clarity of a view. It gives you know what that module is. And actually it makes maintenance easier. We'll talk about a few techniques in a minute. But actually, if you know that your module is defined by a set of dimensions and that's it, every single line item is the same, then you can easily see from the blueprint view what the dimensionality is. You don't have to dive into the module and look at the line items themselves. And again, there are some exceptions where we have to use them for reporting and exporting, etc. But generally, try to think of it. And it doesn't mean that you have to have one module for every single set of calculations. You're grouping the stuff together. So you can have sets of calculations in the same module as long as they're all the same dimensionality. That's a logical place to go for calculations that are customer products by time. You know where to go. It's a calculation module, it's customer products and time. Somewhere in there is going to be the calculation that I need. If it's not there, fine, then I put it there, because it's a logical place to put it for somebody else to find it if they need it. So on that topic of applies to and subsidiary viewing, one of the things that we found out a few years ago, and it kind of was the start of us telling people need to know this, was dimensionality of a module can affect the performance of a calculation when you're trying to do the same calculations from one module or one line item to another line item. So in our example there where we said customers, products and time, if we were multiplying that by another line item that was products, customers and time, that's not as efficient because the engine does an indexing in the background. And what it does is it doesn't kind of know what's coming next because they're in a different order. So the more dimensions that are common in the same order, the engine knows what's coming. So it's a technical thing called prefetch, but effectively it knows what's coming next. So it's gone and got all the information it needs before it needs to do the calculation, which means it can be up to 5 or 6 times faster, and it makes no difference to anything. It makes no difference to your views, to your exports, to your performance, to your size. It's an absolute no-brainer. And it's, again, back to the subsidiary view conversation. You can literally go down your blueprint, click the 3 ellipses, and it will reset the order to be consistent. But it's also part of the understanding. If your business talks about customers and products, then put customers first all the time. There is not as much correlation between biggest to smallest or smallest to biggest, because that depends on the data. So we've seen conflicting reports. So we haven't given guidance on biggest to smallest or smallest to biggest, because the logical way you should set up your hierarchies in your lists is a parent to child relationship, which means by definition you'll be putting the smallest at the top, because you'll be putting regions, then countries, then cities. So if you decided you want to do it the other way around, you don't really want your hierarchy to be inverted. That doesn't make sense. So the guidance is be consistent and do it everywhere. And even in things like the sum formulas and the lookup formulas, that has no effect, but still be consistent. Always put customers first. It's just easier to understand. We've talked quite a lot already about how to break things up, and this is at the heart of what we do now. The engine likes it when it's split up. So breaking up formulas, breaking up constructs. If you imagine every time you've got a plus or a minus or a divide by, really you've got to consider whether you want that in that same formula, because the more of the calculation that's done in one place, the less the engine can actually pre-calculate or calculate once and reference it. So there's no intermediary calculations, there's no subtotals. So it doesn't know what that value was that's now part of a bigger calculation. So it has no way of storing that intermediary calculation for you. So by breaking it up, particularly for ones that don't change very often, so when the model loads up, if there's a big calculation and then it loads it and calculates it, if that's in a separate line item, it never has to calculate it again. If you put that calculation as part of a bigger grouping, it has to calculate it again. So the larger calculations or the more infrequent calculations, you want to just get those out of the way. Just get them done and dusted, and then effectively the engine says, oh, I know what that is. I don't have to recalculate it. And it will then be able to use the processing that we have in the back end to spread the calculations out. The more elements that it can do in parallel, the better for you, and the shorter the time that you will see in your calculations. So it also makes it easy to understand, and it also makes it easy to amend, because you've got different formulas broken up into different sections. So back to that point about formulas falling off the formula bar, break them up into 2 or 3. And back to the point about calculations, if you do break that formula up into 2 pieces, turn the summaries off because you don't need them, because you've broken it up. So A plus B, you've already broken the detail out. So the detail to detail means you don't need summaries. So it won't have as big an impact as you might think for breaking line items up, because there's always a conscious, okay, this makes my model bigger. It may not be quite as bad as you think. And actually, if you adopt some of the other techniques we talk about in the Planual, it will make your model smaller in the first place anyway. So you've got a bit more space to play with. We talked a little bit, this word appropriate I've been using quite a lot recently, and I think that's the best way to describe it. The example I gave earlier was really look at what the expression actually needs to come up with the result. Anaplan will give you the result anyway, and you don't notice the difference, you don't know what it's doing in the background. But if it doesn't need to have that element of a dimension in the calculation, then it shouldn't be in there. And it overcalculates, and you don't know that it's doing it because it doesn't tell you. So when you're doing each expression and each comparison or each plus or minus, have a look at what the applies to is on the line item, and have a look at what the line item really needs to be for that expression. And if you find that it's actually got more dimensions in the applies to than it really needs for the expression, take that expression out, put it into a module that is actually for those dimensions, and then reference it as part of the formula. So it hits all those things we just talked about. It's appropriate, it's calculated once, it's referenced many times, much, much more efficient. The big enemy that we talked about is text and joining text. And exactly onto that point, it flows perfectly onto where we just were. Look at where you have to do a join. We know that you have to do a join. Anaplan is optimized for numbers, and if you use text and strings in particular, it can increase the memory overhead, and we can see poor performance leading from that. But we have to still use it. So we want to try and minimize where we use it and minimize the joins. So if you're joining customers and products together, and with a symbol or an underscore or something, and you've got 5 customers and 1,000 products, do the join in the customer side, because there's only 5 joins. If you do the join in the product side, you've got 1,000 joins. If you do the join in the customers by products, you've got 5 million joins or whatever. So that's the technique that we say, do the join in the smallest possible place, and you mitigate the impact of the text. So, as I said, we have to use it, but be careful. There's an article that demonstrates exactly that. We put it in our training courses now to make sure that we cover this so you can see the technique. And again, that's a really easy one because it doesn't take up a lot more space. It doesn't affect your overall calculations at the end. It doesn't mean you've got to change your code structures. It just means the way you construct that join is much, much more efficient than it used to be. The other probably big learning that we found was since doing this is just coming back to that sparsity point, and this was the big one where we've said, okay, this needs to be said, is transaction data or bringing data into a data hub where we have time-based information and a lot of detail, a lot of combinations in a structure. So customers, account codes, cost centers, we've got 3 or 4 or 5, sometimes even 10 elements that make up a string. We always were told, based on the sparsity conversation, to get rid of the time and make sure that time was part of these rows as well. And one of the findings that when we switched it around and said, well, what happens if we made it in a module and put our time going effectively across as opposed to down? Lists themselves take up a lot of space, just the list member, about 60 times more than just having a normal line item. So what we found was that where you have repetition, so assuming you've got weekly data and there's a value in most of the weeks, you're going to have 40 to 50 rows that effectively have the same information in all the way through. The only thing that's changing is the month or the week and the values. Whereas if you take that element out, you reduce those 40 or 50 rows down to 1 row, and then you spin it across in terms of a module. And yes, your cell count goes up because you've got more cells, but it doesn't cost as much in terms of space. And the bigger impact on this one that we've seen is by doing that, particularly where you have got granular data, so daily data or weekly data, we're seeing 80 to 90% savings on size. The worst we've seen at the moment in real life is 80%. Most of the time it's 90 or plus. So you can massively save size, and surprise, surprise, because of that, you massively save opening times and calculation times. It's a huge, huge win. And again, my colleague from the Operational Excellence Group, Rob Marshall, he presented this at CPX in San Francisco. There's a video online of that. There's also an article that we converted the presentation into. So that really gives you a worked example of the impact. And it's really easy for you to check it. Use your data, strip out the code of the time, work out how many of those combinations you actually have, I mean, we've seen millions of rows of data go down to thousands, and you times that by 500, you can see the effect, because it's kind of hidden, because lists themselves don't count for cell counts, but they do count for gigabytes. So be aware of it, have a look at it, try it out. I think a lot of the things we've talked about up to now, try it and see. You might surprise yourself. We certainly did when we tried some of these. And finally, we're looking at sustainability. It's the S part of it. I mean, this is good modeling anyway. You should be doing this in your spreadsheets and any other system. This isn't just Anaplan. Try to avoid hard coding things, particularly on timescales. We see a lot of select FY19. Now, the problem with that is if you roll the model over, one, you may not be able to roll the model over because 19 may not be there anymore. Or if it does roll it over, 19 may not be where it's supposed to be. It may need to be 20. So, try to use generic time errors like year to date or current period, things like that, which are flexible, because you don't necessarily know as a model builder whether your answers are going to give you the right results or not, because if someone's done that and you're not aware. It also has impact with ALM, using select on certain lists. You can't use application lifecycle. You can't push that out. And lookups do the same thing. In most cases, lookups will give you exactly the same result, same performance. They work slightly differently, but there's no material difference between the two in terms of calculations. But what it means is you now can be flexible. So at the moment, somebody might want to look at this department as part of the results. But what if they change their mind? If you've got a select statement, you've got to find every single calculation where that select statement exists and change it. As an admin, you shouldn't need to go to the blueprint to change your formulas if requirements in the business change. You should be able to do those through a dashboard yourself. So even if you have a single module with no dimensions in it, with a whole load of formatted values that you can choose, you now make that model flexible. So all of your assumptions, all of your tax rates, all of your general commission rates go in one place. And then you can adapt if it needs to. So if you decide that you've got a global commission rate and you want to now vary it by country, fine. Instead of having a hard-coded 10% in all your formulas, you've got a module line item. You make that module dimension by country, and you change the formula downstream to say, now pick it up the country specific. So you're building for the future, as we said. So apart from us telling you that you should do this, it's not an ego trip. It's not us kind of saying we're better than anybody. We've actually built this off real life situations. Most of this has come from the work that our support team do in York, where customers say, we have a problem with our model, be it opening time, be it calculations, be it falling over, whatever it might be. And they can identify the problem. And that's what happened when we started doing this 2 years ago, was we were looking at problems and then saying, well, we've now fixed it. And then we said, well, what happens if I did it that way? Because as we said at the outset, there are a number of ways we can solve the problem. The one that they've come to us with obviously worked, but didn't work very well. That's why they actually asked for us to fix it. So we started looking at what happens if I do it A or B. And we kind of did that for every single thing that we knew about. What would happen if we tried something? The questions that we got from customers and master Anaplanners and product people and internal was, okay, what's the best way of doing this? And if we didn't know, we tested it and we checked it with the facts. So if you follow this through, you've got lots of things that we can see in the field. We do this a lot. We see genuine results. So I'm not going to go through all of the details that are on here, but I'll give you some real life examples. And it touches on all the points that we've just done. We, by changing some formulas in the model, took a 90 gigabyte model, so one of our larger models that we see out there, and it was 11 minutes to open it. By making some small changes to some formulas, we got that down to 2 minutes. The model was I think it was a fraction bigger, it might have been 1% bigger, because we had to break the formulas up slightly. But it was 9 minutes quicker. So as in anyone's trade-off, I'll go 1% bigger for about whatever that maths is, 70, 80% faster. We've seen one formula that when a user typed in an assumption, it was taking 30 seconds, which is unacceptable from a user experience perspective. We looked at the formulas and we found, again, it was combined with 2 or 3 constructs in one place. We split those out, and we actually found that one of those constructs was used elsewhere. So we didn't even need to make it any bigger. We could just change the formula around. That calculation now runs in sub-second. No change to anything else, just 2 formulas changed. And when you combine all these together, I did some work recently with a customer, and they had lots of things going on. They had input processes, they had calculations in there, they had suboptimal formulas. And the process for the users was really terrific. They were having to wait 15 minutes because there was a backlog of the blocks. And we changed the way we approached everything. So we changed a few processes, we changed a few calculations. We just changed the way they worked slightly. So it wasn't exactly everything that they were doing before, because one of the things that we have to get across is Anaplan is not Excel. So sometimes you have to change the way you work slightly. And we got them to understand that, and we proved that by doing it this way, it was a minute. So it was always a minute. So they couldn't get sub-second response times every time they did anything, but they only had to wait a minute. And it was consistently a minute, as opposed to being 15 minutes. So sometimes you have to take the balance, and you have to do that education to your users to say, okay, this is what you're used to, but this is not how Anaplan works. We want to build the models in the right way for you, that work optimally for you, based on everything. And often, you can give them an approach which is close enough to what they really want. We often ask that question, what problem are you actually trying to solve, not what do you think you're trying to do? And that's how you get around the problems, because you can be creative and you can come up with solutions and you can try it. You know, you try things and see. You can, you know, you don't necessarily need our lab to tell you if it's quick enough. You can time it with a stopwatch sometimes. You know, it's 30 seconds now. You change something, does it take 30 seconds? You know, that's a big enough change that you can see. Some of the things we talked about here and we do on some of the training courses and the guidance we give on community, they're going to make 1 second difference. You may not notice it, but you multiply those 1 seconds up everywhere, it makes a big difference. So for me, it's the difference between a user saying it's a bit slow and actually it's fine. You know, you do that regularly. So my ask to you is open it, look at it, read it, download it, you know, not maybe in one go, but you know, take some guidance in there. A lot of the stuff in there, as we said, is general guidelines. You know, the link is there. As I said, you can Google it, you can find it. It's on community. You know, we are going to update it. We're looking to get something out by the end of the year. So this is where we need your help. We need your feedback. We want to know what you want to know, because there's things that you know, use cases that you may be using we're not aware of. We want to know if it's better to do A or B. That's what we've done a lot of. We've tried to catch as much of that as we can. So give us some help to help you. So with that, I think it's over to some questions that may have come in, and then we'll be back in 5. Okay, so we got some questions from the field. The first one of those was around the 10 key principles, and it's saying, what are the biggest mistakes that we see in model building? I've been told I've got about 15 minutes. I could probably spend 15 minutes talking about how many mistakes we see in model building, but that's probably not fair. I think the biggest one we see is where people try to use the techniques they've used in other systems. So they're used to building in Excel, or they're used to building in other software, and I did the same. You know, I've used 3 or 4 different things, and you have to accept that Anaplan is not the same as what you had before. And one of the things that we've taught people over the years, and I was taught it at school with languages, and I think it's exactly the same here with model building, is if you're going to become proficient in a language, you have to think in that language. You have to practice in that language. You don't translate your native language into the foreign language. So certain languages have constructs in their verbs at the end of sentences instead of the beginning of sentences. So if you write and translate in your head English to German, you will be understood, but it's not good German, or Japanese is similar, I think, or any language. And it's the same thing with Anaplan. If you think in Excel and try and build Excel in Anaplan, it will work, and we see it work, and then you'll be calling our York office going, it's not working very well, can you fix it? And when we see some of the structures, you kind of ask the question, why are you building it like that? And it's because they don't really understand the structures and the way Anaplan works, because we have dimensions and multidimensionality. And as I said at the outset, we can do things differently. It's a big difference in Anaplan to the other products is we don't have to use the same structures throughout. We can use different structures. We can map them. We can aggregate without hierarchies. These are all things that you can't do in other products. So accept the fact that it's not the same as what you're used to. Don't try and build it like you're used to, because you'll get something that works, but it's not going to work You know, those that know me know my analogies. It's like playing cricket with a tennis racket. You probably could do it. You wouldn't last very long, and it's the same sort of thing, yeah? So, and it leads in quite nicely to Uzma's question that we've had about new model building training that's coming. And actually, for me, this is where we have to accept the fact that, you know, we need to make sure we teach you the right way. So we don't want you to not understand the constructs in Anaplan. We don't want to leave it to you to just, here you are, here's Anaplan, off you go. Because in some sense it's like that. You start with nothing. There's no guidance at the beginning to say what you're supposed to do. It's a blank piece of paper. So the new training that we've done, which is level 2 and level 1 and level 2 are out there. So if you are a model builder, I would definitely encourage you to go and retake it, because we've changed our approach. We've done a lot more of the best practices. All of the other things we talked about here are embedded from the beginning. But it also explains how Anaplan works. It explains these structures. It explains the way you can do things and the pitfalls of going other routes. So by using the training and unlearning some of the things, so those of you who've been around a while, absolutely, we need to accept it. I built things the wrong way as well. We did it the way we did it 3-4 years ago because that's all we knew. We now know differently. So we have to accept the fact that it's now changed. The best practices have changed. The advice has changed. We've understood more of the product. So just because it worked before doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to carry on going. You know, we're now explaining the right ways to do things, and the training will help you. So for new starters, I think it's fantastic because it really explains how to model properly. It's taking simple use cases, it's giving you the worked examples that you can go back to, it's showing you how to use some of the more complicated areas of Anaplan, yes, but you need to know those how to model. Some of the problems we see are because people don't understand how to use a lookup, for example. So we see these massively nested if statements where a lookup is really simple. So we've taught people how to use a lookup, because actually the construct, once you get your head around it, it's actually quite simple and it's incredibly powerful, and you can build really efficiently with it. So one of the questions, and this is kind of just going through it as I'm talking, it's about using lookups versus select. So this isn't scripted, honestly. This is the order they've come in. Does it work when referring to parents in a list? Now, yes and no is the answer. The other phrase I always say is it depends, but this one is, if it's a composite list, so what I mean by that is if you have lists that are parents and then children that are part of that hierarchy. So region is a list on its own, countries is a list on its own, cities is a list on its own. Lookups work perfectly okay on those because of the way the structure is. If that is all one list and it's not something we advise, because you can't model very well, and again, this is one of the things we see where people come from other systems, is they build one list called cities, and everything has it's in there with everything. So you can build a parent in that list, and you can build a grandparent in that list, and etc. But you can't model just region, because it's all part of the same list. So we don't advise you doing that, but if you do, lookups are a problem in that they don't return the values. But there are some techniques out there, and we can provide the links to them, where you can actually, using another module, bring the data out and effectively do the same thing. So you can't directly point at it, but you can actually get the result you need, which means you can avoid using the select, which does mean it opens up things like ALM for costs. It generally tends to be chart of accounts, where it's kind of a bit of a ragged, messy hierarchy, if you like. That's the problems we see, but it is possible. Like most things, there is a way around it. There's not many things we can't do, and that's one of the ones where the workaround is a little bit tricky, but actually it still will get you to the right result. Sometimes the right result isn't to take the easy option. You actually have to think about what it means if you could solve that problem. Okay, so last couple. What was the biggest aha moment when creating the Planual? I think there's probably two. I think the dimension order was the one that our chief architect told us about that once in a kind of throwaway comment in one of our product customer success, and a few of us who went, whoa, back up, hang on, what did you just say? For me, that was something that we all should have known from day one, which was huge. But I think the other one probably is the data staging one. That really was why is this better this much? We kind of expected that technique might be faster because of the calculation engine. What we didn't expect was it to be that much smaller as well. And that's when we dug into that and said, well, again, and what's happened with the way that we developed the product is there's been an assumption from the beginning about how people would use it, and therefore there's some information that's provided around, cell count, people build modules, that's what they expect to see. we weren't expecting people to use the size of lists and the detail that we've seen. So we didn't account for the list sizes in the metrics that you see necessarily. So it's still there, you can still see it. There's nothing deliberately hidden. It just wasn't a massive consideration because the assumption was modules and cell counts is visible. That's what you want to see. That's what everyone wants to do. So it was that we kind of went, okay, now we understand it. And once you explain it and understand it, it's easy. You can really see the effect. So it gives us the guidance. It says, okay, now that we know this, we'll tell you, so now you can make those decisions. Can you give us a sneak peek of what's to come in the updated Planual? I think the biggest one for me on that one is we tried to get out for CPX in San Francisco in June, so there was a few late entries that we wanted to get in. We thought we need to get these in and get it completed. So for me, and the feedback that we've had from some people, which has been fantastic, is why? There's a few things where we just tell you to do it, and we don't actually say why, which is a fair comment. So we're going to put a bit more colour around why we're saying what we're saying and what the impact might be. So that's the biggest change. And there's a few other ones. There's a little bit on versions that we've seen, which you may have seen the article we did around if you're using versions heavily versus not using versions. And so there's a few of those where we're going to add to them. There's a couple of them that now that the platform itself has changed, probably are not as relevant anymore, so we can take some of those out. But we will put at the beginning what's changed. We're not going to make you do a before and after. That would be too cruel. So we'll put a kind of updated view. This is the appended thing and everything else, and then we'll put that up. I'm hoping to try and get that out by the end of the year, so we can have a V2 from there. But as I said, we really do need your feedback as to what you want to know, what do you not understand, because that will help guide me. You know, some of the feedback we've had has been brilliant, where people said, well, I do this, why is that not a good idea? That really helps. So put the comments on the Planual, feed it back to us, and then we can make this. We want to make this as complete for you as possible. It's not a document for me, it's a document for you. So I want you to get the best out of Anaplan and you to help us facilitate that. So the final question, will the Planual help me become a master Anaplanner? That's a really simple question, simple answer to that one. Yes, it will, because, surprise, surprise, a lot of the master Anaplanner questions are based on the Planual rules. So, and given that I write some of the rules, yes, it will. So if you read it and implement it and understand it, absolutely it will help you. Not that that's the only place you've got to go, but it will certainly help you if you have a copy to hand, because it will definitely tell you some clues. So thank you for the questions, thank you for your attention. It's been fantastic to talk to you today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of User Groups Live.
Thanks, David, for sharing the Planual with us. Be sure to check out the Planual on Community. We've got one more session coming up for you today, focusing on Centres of Excellence, featuring an exclusive interview between two Master Anaplanners that you won't want to miss. But first, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back to User Groups Live, live from London. Don't forget to post your questions in the live chat to the right of the video. Have you visited Anaplan community lately? We're more than 45,000 members strong, and it's where you'll find resources and programs to help you on your Anaplan journey. You can take trainings, become a master Anaplanner, join user groups, search content, and propose new ideas. You can also read up on connected planning thought leadership and connect with Anaplan support teams. In our last topic of the day, we'll dive into Centres of Excellence. At Anaplan, we're committed to making sure you have everything you need to ensure the best possible success. This includes resources and teams dedicated to helping you establish a Centre of Excellence for your organisation. What does that mean? What does it look like? How does it help? And how do you get started? We have two Master Anaplanners who can help. Please welcome Magali Pellissier, Product Manager, and Andrew Tai, Master Anaplanner.
Welcome back to the User Group Live in London. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Magali Pellissier, Product Manager at Anaplan based in London, and I look after the third-party add-ons, which are the Excel add-in, the PowerPoint add-in, and the Google Sheets add-on. Prior to that, I was a customer and I built models, and I am also a Master Anaplanner. I'm very pleased today to be talking to another Master Anaplanner about Centre of Excellence. Please welcome Andrew Tai, who's been watching the user group here in London as a live audience. So how did you find it?
Thanks, Magali. So it's been really interesting sitting just over there, listening to all the content and listening to all the speakers, and it's been a really great event. I watched the York event at home on my laptop, and that was very good, but to actually see it in the flesh and all of the technical that's just behind the camera has been very interesting.
Yeah, good. So give us a bit of background. Can you please introduce yourself? Tell us about your Anaplan journey so far.
So I used to work for Thomas Cook, heading up essentially the finance Anaplan team. Had it for about 3 years until the end of September, and traditional FP&A use cases, so cash flow, budget forecasting, and we'd started to connect outwards in the business as well. So we had a team in our yielding department, so where the holiday prices were set, and they had some tools, and we started to slowly connect those models together to really drive out some value and some good decision making.
Okay, great. So can you tell us a bit more about how you became a Master Anaplanner?
Yeah, so I think it was just a continuation of sort of personal journey in Anaplan. So you start with the building, and you start with get a use case out, and then as you start to move out, you realise, oh, there's this program called Master Anaplanner, and you do a bit of investigation, a bit of research, and you think, yeah, that's something that I want to attain to. And so you find out what you need to do, you sign up, and you go, okay, well, I've done some model building and Anaplan, check that out. And they go, yeah, you do model building in kind of the right way. And then, you then do a test. As David mentioned earlier on, it's been rewritten, there's some new questions, and it is tough. Don't get me wrong, it's 2%, I think, is what Anaplan are trying to target for Master Anaplanners. I think there's, I don't know, a couple of hundred of us around the world, a few of us in the UK. So yeah, it's a very, very select bunch of people, and we really, it's hard to get to, but it's worth the journey.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely worth as well for the Anaplan swag.
Oh, absolutely,
that really
yes.
is.
For the
Yes.
the cool stuff that you get, it's definitely worth it for that.
Good. So thank you for that. And going back to your journey with Anaplan, can you tell us a bit more about the roles you've held so far?
Yeah, so when Anaplan first came into Thomas Cook, I was very much within the finance team, day to day, doing analysis, doing that, forecasting. We brought in Anaplan to solve two very specific problems that we were having around our ability to run our cash flow forecasting process, and also around our channel forecasting, so where we are going to sell holidays, either through retail, through web, through third-party agents, and when in the booking cycle those would happen. As you might expect, that was being done in Excel, and there is only so much you can do in Excel before it doesn't anymore. And so Anaplan was used to solve those two examples. Very quickly, it became apparent that those that were doing Anaplan could only do Anaplan. You couldn't do it as part of something else. It needed to be the majority of the role because of the change in thinking, as David said. It is very different. You have to think and write in Anaplan. You can't know Excel and then translate it to Anaplan. You can, as he says, but you don't do a very good model. And everyone's journey is probably the same. The first model you build is potentially not very good. It will do the thing you want it to do, but you will be able to do better. So at the end, my entire role was 100% Anaplan because it needed to be to solve the problems that we were having.
So you've had people developing more and more their Anaplan skills.
Yes.
And we've got people in the live audience who are master Anaplanners now. So everybody has been or is going through this journey. Yeah. You need to set up a proper team with strong Anaplan skills. So has that journey been to build like a strong team with Anaplan skills, and how has that helped improving your processes?
Yes, I think that you don't need to have many people that are 100% Anaplan. You need a few key people that can go, right, this is how you develop Anaplan, in Anaplan, in your organisation, and drive out that value. Embedded within your local business teams, so in your finance teams, in your operations teams, in your marketing teams, there will be people there that Anaplan is part of their skill set. So you will have people in, say, marketing teams that will know how to use Google Analytics and Tableau and also Anaplan, but it's not their entire existence. It doesn't matter that they're not 100% Anaplan because they don't need to be, but you do need to have some core people at the centre that live and breathe it.
So how have you helped spread Anaplan across the business?
So it's very much being an internal consultant, if you will. So you build a use case in one part of the organisation, and then users of that use case in other departments will go, oh, that's really nice. I can see how you're getting some value there. Why can't we use Anaplan in our department? And so you then, do a little bit of a show and tell. You might bring in Anaplan people to really do that deep dive analysis, and then it's go, right, well, have you got some people in your team that you might want to have Anaplan or that are interested themselves in doing Anaplan? And it just sort of organically grows out as people understand what a difference it can make to business performance and also people's own personal work life. Before we brought in Anaplan for the two key use cases, people were coming in early and going home late and just being tired and frustrated and annoyed and angry, and that's not particularly good as for a team of people. People with the Anaplan model, they were coming in to work, happy to be coming to work if you ever can be, but they were going home on time. They weren't stressed quite as much. They knew the process worked. They knew they were able to get in the data, out the data, do the analysis, answer the questions, feel like they were adding value to something rather than just doing it and pumping out a number.
Yeah. I think some people can relate here, and from my personal experience when I worked at British Airways and I discovered Anaplan, I was really engaged with a product, because rather than refreshing some spreadsheets and trying to find out what that link is and changing that formula because it broke and things like this, I just used Anaplan, and you could generate new numbers, new forecasts in minutes rather than days. So you're a master Anaplanner, congratulations, and thank you very much for your contribution to the community. So people here may be wondering, okay, we're talking about center of excellence here. Do we need a master Anaplanner absolutely before we do a center of excellence? What's your opinion about that?
So I would say you don't need to have a master Anaplanner with a certificate. You don't need to have people like us. What you do need to have, however, is people that really understand the platform. So there could be people in your team that are on that journey to master Anaplanner and effectively are in all but name. That's what you need for a centre of excellence. You just need people that can really understand the platform, spread the word of the platform, understand what needs to be done, and if they happen to be master Anaplanners, that's fine. It doesn't matter that much. They should become master Anaplanners as quickly as they can be, but yeah, I don't think it's entirely necessary at the beginning.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we scared people a little bit initially when we said, oh, you've got to do this and that to become a master Anaplanner. Now we're saying, do not worry,
It'll be fine, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. Like, really, how tough is it to become a master Anaplanner?
So I would say, if you are in Anaplan and you are building all the time and you are building properly and you're building good stuff, half of what you need to do is already done, because basically it's Anaplan, look at what you are doing in Anaplan. And so if you are building good stuff, they can see that and they can see what you're doing. So, you fill in the application form, and as long as you've done a year within Anaplan, then as a model builder, they'll just go, yeah, that's fine, move on to the next stage. And the next stage is hard. Read the Planual, as David said, read around the subjects that will be covered in the exam, and it's a hard exam. I mean, it's having not really had to do much in terms of examinations for quite a while. It was hard having to think about what on earth the question was asking of you, and whether some answers were more right than other answers, but you pass the exam and then you become a master Anaplanner, and then people come to you to talk about Anaplan, and you then become essentially an evangelist for the product, and you come and do things like this if you want to.
Yeah, no, that's a great...
Or not, if you don't want to. And
you don't have to.
You don't have to, no. At all.
But it's fun.
But it's fun. Yeah.
Good. So we'd like to acknowledge your previous company, Thomas Cook. How has being a master Anaplanner helped you through the recent events?
Yes, I think that it's been very helpful being a master Anaplanner. It's probably been more helpful being a very good customer of Anaplan and being someone that talks about Anaplan very positively. People might see, people that comment on articles and that sort of thing. If you do it positively and in the right way, then Anaplan thinking, oh yeah, that's someone that we want to support in their career. So there was the CPX London event, which happened to be not too long after Thomas Cook ceased trading, and that really helped because it showed that there was lots of opportunity out there which you don't necessarily know exists because you're in work and you're often not trying to find a job. You're there to enjoy the experience, but it really showed, for those of us that went there, that there is opportunity, lot of opportunity with people with Anaplan skills, particularly master Anaplanners, because loads of customers, loads of companies are using Anaplan, and we are quite a unique resource.
Yeah, no, I think we're quite proud at Anaplan to live our values every day. You've seen our values on the video a bit earlier, and really we are supportive, and we're glad we've been able to help you through the recent events. So now we've got people here listening to us, and I ask you, okay, I want to do a Center of Excellence because this is a great thing. I'm sure my customer success business partner talks to me about it. I need to do it. I've got an idea about how to start, but I'm not quite sure. Where do I start? What's your opinion as a master Anaplanner?
So I would go to the Center of Excellence page on Community, read it, understand what it means, bring in your customer success business partner, have them talk to you about Center of Excellence. Email Chris Weiss. He'll love to be able to talk to you about Center of Excellence. I was very fortunate enough to be at the CPX San Francisco event and went to the Center of Excellence training session, and it really helped to answer a load of questions. It brought up a bunch of other questions, but really helped to frame what a Center of Excellence is and what it, perhaps more importantly, isn't within the Anaplan ecosystem.
So we say a lot of positive things about Center of Excellence, why you should have them, but we really need to have some metrics, you need to show the benefits really. Have you ever measured the benefits in your previous role?
So aside from clearly the process time that's saved and the cheerier, for want of a better word, working environment, it's sometimes very hard to be able to go, right, well, because we've put in that Anaplan model and that use case, it has made that impact to the bottom line. What you can say is, well, because we've brought in Anaplan, we can go, okay, well, we're hitting our deadlines more effectively. We are able to produce forecasts and produce plans and better understand the direction of the business and what may or may not happen in the future, and answer those questions from senior management which you just couldn't do previously.
So in your previous role, you basically managed the practice, the Anaplan practice for the finance team. What kind of people did you have to support that group that manages Anaplan?
So it was essentially a bunch of accountants within the team, and they were using Anaplan. There were some users of Anaplan, so people that just literally typed in, drivers, assumptions, working with the areas that they were business partnering. And then we had some modelers who looked after their specific models for their particular teams, and then we had others that were looking at it in terms of more of a wider ecosystem. So how do different models interact with other models, and how do these calculations relate to other calculations, and making sure that as a sustainable data hub in place, and that everything is looking at the same single version of the truth. And all the things that Anaplan talk about, we tried to implement them. It's quite hard to implement all of it because at the end of the day you've got to produce something that your customers can use. And through the Anaplan way and through the agile methodology that underpins that, you can produce incrementally and get something out, and eventually you get a much better model from it.
Mm. So you've got a team of accountants, they know their job, they know what they've got to do. You've got people like you, master Anaplanner, you know Anaplan inside out. What do you think you need from other types of support in the company to help you manage the change? Because it's not about just bringing Anaplan and it's going to do the magic. You need to change the processes, enable people, support them through that journey with Anaplan.
Yes, so you do need strong leadership from senior team. So, you need, if you're in the finance department, you need a finance director, which we had, that was very supportive of Anaplan deployment within the department. You need to have people that really understand the benefit that it can make and can help to explain that it's a change that is good and that you're not taking away people's work, because sometimes people you'll come in with a new system and it'll be like, oh, this system is going to do this, and like, oh, hang on a second, that might roll redundant. Well, actually, that won't hopefully be not true. What it will mean is that you'll be able to do more of the stuff that you should be doing and less of the transactional standard process type activity.
Yeah. So you've got people like this who are going to be able to do their job in an easier, more efficient way.
Yes.
It's actually freeing up their time from processes and a kind of spreadsheet kind of nightmare to then actually do some work, go into the details of the analysis and be able to give better insights for better decision makings. So got people like this, maybe that's you, and you think, oh, I really want to, use Anaplan, to be better at my job. And you've got people who are going to specialize into Anaplan and say, oh, I actually like building models and think about how we can improve processes. So you've got those two kind of career paths. So how has Anaplan influenced your career trajectory?
So it has clearly helped. So obviously for a while I was in between jobs, as people would expect, but I do have a very good opportunity that is just tying up a couple of ends, and hopefully very soon I will be back being really active on the Anaplan community and really helping this organisation to drive forward their Anaplan usage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So overall, it's a very positive story. Yeah. Okay, so two last pieces of advice for people here who want to become master Anaplanners and want to set up a center of excellence. What are your two things that you recommend they do just after the session?
So I would, for Master Anaplanner, have a look at the Master Anaplanner page on Community and read that and understand it. And for Centre of Excellence, I would do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Look at the community pages, quite literally all the information to get those, initial thinkings bubbling around will be there.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning that you're not alone in that journey. If you want to be a master Anaplanner, you're not sure what to do and so on, you're not alone. You can register on the website, and even if you're not ready yet to pass the test, you can still have some help from us, Anaplan, to guide you through what you need to do to become a master Anaplanner. Same for Center of Excellence. Don't stay on your own thinking a lot about what you need to do. You can get some support from your customer success business partner. You've got all the information on the community, and we are here on the community as well. So post your questions, ask us whatever you want, and we'll do our best to reply. And we've got an audience here. I'm sure they're ready to help you as well. icon. That's it. So I think we've got a few questions from the chat, so let's have a look at them. Good, so we've got some questions for you. You can answer first and I'll add
fill in.
Good, so the first one is, as a master and a planner, what advice would you give to a model builder just starting on their Anaplan journey?
So I would say don't be afraid to basically get it wrong. Obviously we have the Planual now. When I started on my Anaplan journey, the Planual didn't exist. You were not left to your own devices to get things wrong and to figure out what on earth you were doing. But a new model builder now, there is so much more support.
Yeah.
There are so many more guidelines. There's so much more people understand of the platform now. It's a lot easier, I think, to be a new model builder now than what it was certainly when I began being a model builder.
Yeah, I began 4 years ago as well, and there was no guideline. So you just build, and you had 5 options to build the same thing, and you were like trying to figure out which one was the best, you know. And now we've got those guidelines. I think it may be a bit scary to have so much material, actually. So, you know, just start small, read, you know, 1 page of a Planual, try and practice, and then you're gonna start working on finance model, and you're gonna learn some things, and then you're gonna expand Anaplan in your company and look at another use case, and you're gonna learn other things. So you don't have to know it all, you know, you just learn step by step.
And I would say, if you haven't, do the level 1 training, because it will really help you to get that good under the bonnet understanding of, you know, basics to a pretty good level of model building, and then in time you will be able to move on to the level 2 stuff.
Good, thank you very much. For the next question, Master Anaplanner sounds great, and it is.
It is.
But you've only discussed the benefits. Are there downsides? No. Honestly.
There wasn't. No. So I think that one thing that I would say about being Master Anaplanner, there is a certain level of expectation that you will be visible in the community.
Here we go, and we are
here. We are. You don't have to do things like this. You don't have to do user groups live. You don't have to be up on stage at CPX, because, you know, for some people, and probably for a lot of people, I couldn't imagine anything worse for some people. But writing articles, doing blog posts, doing potential customer phone calls, Anaplan will ask you. Really, it's what are you most comfortable with doing, and then going to Anaplan and go, I'd like to. I'm a Master Anaplanner, or want to become a Master Anaplanner, but I've heard, you know, there's some stuff on the side that I might need to do. It doesn't take a lot of your time. So for this, I was going to be coming to this event anyway. And then the community team said, do you want to be part of it? So they will only ever ask you to do something if they know you're already going to be doing it anyway. And it took very little extra of my time. Clearly I'm in a slightly unique case when I've got all the time in the world at the moment, but even if I was working, it wouldn't have been much extra time to be part of this event.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can get involved, you know, you don't have to, you can, and it's brilliant, you know, we've got lots of events, you're VIP for Anaplan, so it's great. Next question, are there any mock examples of the questions to expect for the Master Anaplanner qualification? Would be good to be able to have a benchmark.
So, I don't know, is the answer to that question.
Me neither.
You neither.
But, okay, I'm going to tell you something, a secret. Yesterday, we had a Modelers Forum group here in London. I think in the first session, Paul Gallagher talked about it. And I was part of the people who initiated the group, so it's really great. I encourage you. And yesterday, we had a guest, David Smith, who has talked before, and he gave us 3 questions from the Master Anaplanner exam.
Oh, excellent.
So we were able to actually discuss the questions, you know, and discuss the answers, why one was wrong and the other one was right. So that's the kind of thing you can do. I don't believe there are mock questions, but all the material is available on the community. It's also an open book exam, so you can, you know, you don't need to know it all, like the limitation on the, you know, on a specific formula.
I mean, sort of, it would be, I don't think any of the questions that got asked when I did it were, you couldn't find the answer. You could find the answer within community somewhere, within, you know, the training material somewhere. All the answers are there. Some of the questions are straightforward. Some of the questions are less straightforward. And some of the questions are just plain just difficult. Because so say you are using Anaplan Connect, and that's how you get data into your model. There will be probably questions in there to do with HyperConnect. And if you don't use HyperConnect, then you don't know it. Yeah. But it doesn't take a lot to then read up about it. So, you know, all the information's there.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to play that game, just post on the community and we'll probably find some questions for you.
Yes. We'll find you the easy questions, the ones that, if you get those wrong, then...
Okay, next question. Best example you've seen of a high-performing center of excellence. So I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to share that from like examples for customers. My favorite example is Aviva. I mean, they've really invested in the product Anaplan, you know, training people, creating a center of excellence. They've got a center of excellence lead now with, you know, really trying to map out how things are going to work for Aviva with Anaplan. And I think that's brilliant. And I can really tell the success from some companies who've implemented Anaplan really comes from how they've managed their center of excellence, thinking about it from the start in their journey, not implementing a model, no data hub, no anything, little training, and then, we've heard of that fancy idea of a center of excellence. No, think about it in advance and, you know, plan your journey with Anaplan, and this is how you're going to be successful.
And of course, Anaplan themselves have quite a good center of excellence, I would imagine, given that, you know, if you're not using Anaplan in Anaplan, then you're definitely not doing your job right.
Yeah, that was the topic actually of one of the previous user groups. We had an Anaplan on Anaplan session, and now we are converting on all our models on the new UX, so it's very exciting. Cool. Thank you very much for coming today. Very glad to be talking to another Master Anaplanner, and I hope you're going to be soon, you know, thinking about, can I be a Master Anaplanner soon? And, you know, actually, that idea of a center of excellence is very good. Like, how can I implement it in my organization? So thank you very much for joining. I know it's late now and you spent the whole afternoon with us. So we just look forward to hearing from you on the community. And if you've got some additional questions which we haven't answered, you can post them in the chat and we'll carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Magali and Andrew, for sharing your experiences with the Master Anaplanner programme. That wraps up User Groups Live from London. Thank you to our speakers, our special guests, our customers and partners. Thank you all for watching and interacting online, and thank you to our live studio audience. Remember, the live chat will stay open for 30 minutes. The event has been recorded, and you'll receive an email link when the recording is available, and feel free to share. You can find previous event recordings in community as well. Want even more? Join a user group in the community and connect with other Anaplan users in your area. If you've enjoyed User Groups Live this week, we hope you'll join us again early next year for User Groups Live from Minneapolis. More details coming soon. Thank you again and farewell from London.